Welcome to PSY 316, Study Session 2, Models of Memory. Introduction. The lecture introduces you to the two most popular explanations of the way human memory works. These are the storage and transfer model proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin, 1968 to 1971, and the levels of processing model by Craig and Lockhart, 1972. Each of these two models views human memory in different perspectives. Objectives. At the end of the lecture, you should be able to 1. Mention the two most popular models and describe how human memory works. 2. Explain human memory from the perspective of storage and transfer model with examples. And 3. Explain human memory from the perspective of levels of processing models with examples. Pretest. 1. Explain how memory works from the storage and transfer model. 2. Mention and discuss the 3 types of memory according to Atkinson and Shiffrin. Content. Models of human memory. A. Storage and transfer model of memory. According to Atkinson and Shiffrin's storage and transfer model of memory, all of us have 3 types of memory. First, material comes through our senses, eyes, ears, nose, and so forth into sensory memory. Depending on the particular sense involved, material lasts for or from 1 second to a few seconds in sensory memory. Thereafter, information either disappears or is transferred from sensory memory into short-term memory, where it may last for approximately 20 seconds. If it does not appear at this stage, it moves into long-term memory, where it may remain for the rest of your life. Since this model proposes multiple levels of storage system, it is sometimes called the multi-store model of memory. Atkinson and Shiffrin's storage and transfer model of memory states that information comes through the senses and enters sensory memory. It may then enter short-term memory, whether it remains for no more than a few seconds unless held longer by rehearsal. If it is not forgotten, it enters long-term memory, where it is organized and stored. When information is recalled, it is retrieved from long-term memory and moved back to short-term memory. It is noteworthy that the capacity of short-term memory is limited, but the capacity of long-term memory is virtually limitless. Table 1. A typical form of storage and transfer model of memory. Information to short memory. Forgotten unless transferred to short-term memory. Rehearsed short-term memory. Moves to long-term memory. If not, forgotten unless transferred to long-term memory. Note, SM equals to short memory. STM, short-term memory. LTM, long-term memory. B. Levels of processing model of memory. There is another way of looking at how memory works. Some researchers, Craig and Lockhart, 1972, Craig and Tuvin, 1975, disagreed with the concept of memory as a division into 3 separate structures. Instead, they identified one kind of memory and proposed a levels of processing model of memory. This model is based on the idea that the ability to remember is dependent on how deeply we process information. We process material along a continuum of several increasing depth, running it through on levels that range from quite shallow to very deep. The deeper you process material, the longer it lasts. How does this concept work? The shallowest level of processing, according to this model, involves your awareness of a sensory feature. That is, what a word or number looks like or sounds like what a food smells or tastes like, and so on. As you recognize some kind of pattern in your sensory impression, you will process it more deeply. When you make an association, that is, give a meaning to your impression, you will be at the deepest level of processing, the level at which you form the strongest and the most enduring memory trace. In short, the levels of processing model of memory holds that the ability to remember is dependent on how deeply you process information. For example, your ability to remember a memorized mobile phone number given to you by an old friend depends on how processed the information is in your memory. If you had been a subject in a study that Craig and Tuvin, 1975, ran to test this hypothesis, you would have been asked to look at a number of different words. You would have been asked whether each word was in capital letters, whether it rhymed with a specific sound, whether it would fit into a given category, or whether it would fit into a particular sentence with a blank spot. To get a picture of the levels of processing for these words, see Table 2. Typical questions and answers in the levels of processing experiment. Levels of processing. 1. Structural. Then the second table, depth of processing, shallow. Questions. Is the word in capital? Answers, yes or no. Table in capital, table in small letter. 2. Phonemic sound. Depth of processing, intermediate. Questions. Does the word rhyme with weight? Answers, crate, market. 3. Category. Depth of processing, deep. Question. Is the word a type of fish? Answers, shark, heaven. 4. Sentence. Depth of processing, deep. Question. Would the word fit this sentence? He met a dash in the street. Answer, friend or cloud. After these questions, you would have received a surprise quiz on the words, in which you would have been asked to recall or recognize them. Recall and recognition are two different measures of memory. Recall is a measure of retention in which the subject has to reproduce from memory material that has been previously learned. Recognition is a measure in which the subject is confronted with material that has been previously learned and is asked to identify it. In this experiment, Craig and Tuvin of 1975 found that deeper levels of processing generally took longer to accomplish than the shallower levels and produced stronger memories of the words. Follow-up tests suggested that it was not the time itself but the depth of processing which was important. When a complex but shallow task was assigned, such as classifying vowel and consonant patterns, according to a complicated formula, it took longer to carry out than an easy but deeper task, for example, deciding whether a word would fit into a sentence. The levels of processing explanation has some gaps in it. For one thing, the type of test used to measure memory may well influence the conclusion drawn. In another experiment, questions like, was there something in the words you saw that rhymed with pain, gave better results than the sentence task, Morris, Bransford, and Franks, 1977. Apparently, then, there are cases where a shallower level of processing, that is, the phonemic level in this case, as described in Table 2, gives better retention than a deeper level. In addition, another contradictory finding has appeared. When subjects are presented with the same item and the same encoding questions more than once? Does the word train have N sound? Then remember the item better, Nelson, 1977. The second presentation does not call for any deeper processing. It requires only more of the same. And so, the explanation for better recall after 2 trials has to be sought outside the levels of processing model. Furthermore, we don't yet have an objective way to measure depth of processing. We can't go by the time required, as we have seen. All we are left with is the intuitive assumption that processing by meaning is deeper than processing by physical characteristics. It may well be, but where is the proof? Summary. The lecture has been able to explain the 2 most popular explanations of the way human memory works. These are the storage and transfer model and the levels of processing model. The first puts memory into 3 structures: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. The latter states that there is only one kind of memory, which is more of how deeper or shallower information is determined by its ability to recall it. Post-test. 1. Explain what recall and recognition are. 2. What are the differences between recall and recognition? End of study session 2. Take 2. End of study session 2. Thank you for listening.